Well, welcome to the Walter Bosley channel, and this is the return of some audio episodes that I'm going to be creating, presenting to you. Just a little bit of background. We've moved our studio back to my house. Malia moved from the place she was at where we had the studio set up to a smaller place, and until we come up with an alternative, we're back here at my house, just across the way from where she lives. And today, I thought I would kick off the new audio episodes with sharing some information from a book that I received from one of you subscribers. Thank you, Nick N. One of many books that Nick provided me. This one's titled Missing Link of World Civilization, Indo-Aryan Colonization. This is by Vishnu Kant Varma, and it was published by Dr. Radhe Shyam Shakla in India. And I'm very grateful for all these books that came from India to me through our friend Nick N. Thank you again, Nick N. In chapter 17, I believe it is, in this book, let me double check. Yeah, chapter 17, we have the origin of Chinese and Tartar princely order from Kandra Vamsa. And you get into this chapter, it's not a very long chapter, and you come to a subheading titled Origin of the Tartars. Now, why is this interesting? Why do I want to share this with you? Because as you know, I think the Tartaria folks are onto something. I generally disagree with those who point to, modern era. When I say modern era, let's say anything in the last 200 years, that we know who built it, how it was built. There's records of it. And some of the Tartaria folks just choose to deny these records. Okay, that's a choice. And that's what I disagree with in the Tartaria world, the Tartaria research community. And they know this. I'm very vocal about it. Guys and gals, you're onto something legit, but that's not it. Okay? So I look to more the older history of this to see if I can find any hint that there indeed was this relatively, remember, emphasis on the word relative, but relatively advanced, technologically advanced civilization known as Tartaria or the Tartarian Empire. And you all, my regular audience, knows that I'm kind of intrigued with this, what I refer to as Vedic history, meaning that there was way, way back long ago an advanced civilization with origins in the region of today's India, right? And I'm intrigued with this. Okay, I can't prove it yet. Nobody can, beyond all question, of course. But it is an idea that intrigues me deeply. And so I thought, well, is there anything in these books that talk about human civilization from a perspective different from Western civilization historians? And sure enough, I found this in chapter 17 of Varma's book, Missing Link of World Civilization, Indo-Aryan Colonization is the subtitle. So let's go back to chapter 17 in this book, the origin of Chinese and Tartar princely order of the, I guess there's an article missing there. These were translated, of course. The subheading is Origin of the Tartars. And I'll read from the book. The sources of authentic Chinese history are the writing of the Chinese historian D. Guigné. In the same way, the authentic Tartar Mughal history is available in the writings of the Mughal historian Abul Ghazi. Colonel Todd says, "Let us compare the origin of Tartars and Mongols, as given by their historian Abul Ghazi, with the races we have been treating of from the Puranas." And excuse me if the English seems awkward. I'm reading something that was a translation, of course. I'll continue reading. Mogul was the name of the Tartar patriarch. His son was Oghuz, founder of all the races of those northern regions called Tartars and Moguls. Oghuz or Oghuz had 6 sons. First Kun, the sun, the Surya of the Puranas. Secondly, I, the moon, the Indu of Puranas. In the latter Ayu, we have even the same name as in the Puranas for the lunar ancestor. Although unlike the Puranas, Chandra and Ayu are... Okay, they left out a little grammar there. Should be a comma. Although unlike the Puranas, Chandra and Ayu are not distinct characters in the Tartar list or Chinese list either, where the 2 individuals of Puranas are merged in one personality. There is little doubt that these 2 names have been borrowed by Chinese or Tartar list from the Puranic source. Further, one more character, Hayu, of the Puranic genealogy occurs as it is in either of the 2 genealogical lists, the Chinese and the Tartar. All this cannot be looked upon as a chance similarity in the standing Puranic claim that the Chinas and the barbarians originated from the expatriate Indian warrior class, that's East Indian, substantiated by the similarity in genealogical characters, necessitates the existence of some link between the Chinese and Tartar forefathers, with the ancient Bhartiya Chandra Vamsa, most probably with Patriarch Yadu or his son Hayu. One special feature is worthy of notice. In the Puranic Chandravamsi genealogical list, beginning from Kandra, the 7th descendant is Anu. That's interesting, folks. The A-N-U, like Anu, like the Anunnaki or the Tuatha children of Anu. I'll continue reading. In the Greek genealogical list, the 7th from Japhet is Ionian. Since Jaivatraka is a name of Kandra, this parallelism suggests that Ionian is the corrupt form of Anu. And in fact, it was Anu who, on being denied the title to the throne of the Gangetic kingdom by his father Yayati, left India to plant a colony in Greece. So I'll pause there. That's, again, a East Indian, Hindu, Vedic, whatever, however you want to identify it, origin for the Greek civilization, according to this book. Curiously enough, the 7th descendant from Chandra in the Kandra Vamsi Puranic line was Hayu, a character bearing the same name is credited in the Chinese annals for establishing the Henan dynasty in China in about 2200 BC. This nearly matches the time that the Greek Ionians claimed their origin. Thus, it can be noticed that the 7th descendants from Patriarch Kandra are seen as the originators of dynasties either in Greece or in China, of which the Tartar line was an offshoot. Having established this on the basis of names common in the genealogical list of foreign dynasties and the East Indian counterpart, the Puranic verse, which throws light on the origin of foreign races, gets verified from the genealogical lists of foreign princes. To this evidence, when the evidence of the origin of the first ruling Chinese prince, as found in Chinese history, is added, there remains little doubt for the Indian origin of the ruling Chinese Henan dynasty. And since the Tartar history is similar to Chinese history, the Tartar ruling dynasty also rose from a branch allied to the Chinese ruling dynasty. Thus, both the Chinese and Tartar ruling class of the remote past arose from a single ruling expatriate East Indian family. This is very interesting. I'll continue. It seems that the Puranic verse, which describes the origin of Mlekas from Anu and Yavanas from Turvasu, underwent some distortion. Scholars are of the opinion that the race of Turanians took its inception from Turvasu, which seems to be quite appropriate from the philological point of view, and the Ionians are the descendants of Anu. So then we come to sub-chapter 4, titled The Expansion of Khandravamsa in Mongolia and Tatarstan. The character I, or Ayu of the Puranas, is described by the Tartar historians as the progenitor of the Tartar race. Okay, so that's Ayu of the Puranas, according to Tartar historians, was the progenitor of their race. That's interesting. Collecting information from the Tartar historian Abul Ghazi, Colonel Todd describes the Tartar genealogy thusly, quote, I Khan, the ninth from I, had two sons, first Khayan and secondly Nagas, whose descendants peopled all of Tartary. From Khayan, Genghis Khan claimed, from Khayan, comma, should be there, Genghis Khan claimed descent. Nagas was probably the founder of the Taksak, or snake race, of the Puranas, and Tartar genealogists, the Takyuk, Moguls of Deginyes. This is interesting because, as we know, Nagas mean, kind of like snake people, right? And that's a very simplified, but you get the idea. It is clear from this Tartar genealogy that Ayu's descendant Nagas was the founder of the Nag, or Tax, a race. Okay, the Nag or Tax race. All right. You've got to forgive me. The punctuation and grammar in this, the punctuation is kind of not there. The land inhabited by Taksaka began to be called Taksakstan, which got corrupted to Tatarstan and got further corrupted to Tartarstan, or Turkestan, and Tajikistan. The Taksaks began to be called Takari, Takyuk, Takash, which later became Tajuk. Taskand, the capital of Azerbaijan, can be derived from Takashkand. Okay. Thus it is clear that the history of the Taksks, or Nagloka, described in the Puranas, refers to the land now called Tazdakistan, and in ancient times the residents of Tazdakistan, the Takstakstan, or Tokaristan, were Hindus by faith who later accepted Islam. Thus, the Puranic history of Taksaks goes much anterior in time to the Tartar history of Abul Ghazi, by whose time the appellation Taksak had got corrupted to Takari or Takyuk. All this land now known by the name Tartary, which he parenthetically describes or identifies with Turkestan, was populated in ancient times by expatriate Indo-Aryan settlers. Let me see. And then there's section 5, confirmation of Puranic narration by Chinese history. It has been seen in section 1 that the origin of the Chinese royal Henan dynasty is associated, I don't know if they mean Hunan or Henan, but maybe that's my ignorance, that the origin of the Chinese royal Henan dynasty is associated with Buddha Illa episode of Puranas in the form of a star foe striking Yu's mother. Two Puranic characters, Ayu and Hayu of Khandravamsi lineage, find important places as progenitor of the royal Henan dynasty, which began in 2200 BC. As a consequence of the inception of Chinese royal line from members of Bhartiya Khandravamsa, the Puranic versions of the Indian royal genealogy can no more be looked upon as legends and myths, but these are past records of real historical personages who once lived and possessed this earth. And since the Henan dynasty rose 2200 years before Christ, the Purana writing is pretty old, older than 2200 BC at least. It was never written down at a single stretch, but what was the work of a continuous writing from times immemorial, and families of priests were engaged in this work generation after generation. It may be at interval of some period to add the portion of history of their part to the already existing previous records. That was a clunky sentence. I apologize. I'm only reading what I see. Reading on. This shows that some sort of writing, however crude, was known, and the previous records were rewritten as soon as the old gave way to the decaying process of time. We have already seen that Puranic personages were mentioned in written Sumerian records of 3500 to 2700 BC, and the Sumerians say that they came to the land of Sumer with a script in hand. This link itself is too suggestive that the Sumerians were emigrant Sindhus or Hindus. It can thus be seen that the Chinese Yu, the Tartar Ayu, and the Puranic Ayu all represent one and the same person. The Chinese and Tartar sources all point to the great patriarch Chandra of the Puranas, on whom all dynasties converge when traced back in time. Chandra's son Buddha became the progenitor of the Chinese Henan dynasty by the name Fo. He became the progenitor of races in Europe by adopting the name Woden. Isn't that interesting? These evidences in ancient history are too strong to be suppressed or neglected on the ground of romance of imagination, and sticking to the theory of Aryan invasion of India, which to this day has not a single evidence to support it, is only a flight of wild imagination, when the ancient facts, jointly or separately, point out to the contrary, to the theory of Indo-Aryan migration to other countries. That's the end of that chapter. Well, that's really interesting, and I think if we're considering an ancient Indian, East Indian, going back into the Puranas, going back to those lost advanced civilizations, or, the major one that we like to talk about here, and you look at the hypotheses of the present-day Tartarian enthusiasts, that they had, the Tartarians, their empire, had some form of comparatively advanced technology. And we, have had the discussion of advanced technological knowledge possessed by what we call the Vedic civilization long, long ago. I think it adds to, in a significant, in a legitimate way, the discussion on the so-called Tartarian Empire that is, allegedly lost to us. You have one lore that's claiming this advanced technology in a civilization long, long ago, and then you have this other thing, this other theory about the Tartarian Empire that claims much the same thing. And here you have in Varma's book, at least him citing various historians presenting, their claims, their evidence that, maybe the origin of the mysterious lost Tartarian Empire was this lost Vedic culture, this lost Vedic civilization, inherited, if you will, by India, modern India. I think it's worthy to consider, and I certainly now will pour through these books that I was given, these books published in India, for more information on a Tartarian Empire link to the Vedic civilization. And I think, I think a discussion like this is going to serve those who are proposing this lost Tartarian Empire. It's going to serve their discussion, their hypothesis, much better than claiming that the Parthenon in Nashville was this ancient building. Come on, folks. Come on. No. Anyway, I'll be presenting more on this. I'll be discussing more of this. This is interesting. So anyway, there you go. There's a quick little audio episode. There will be more. And I look forward to seeing you guys at the live streams, of course. Anyway, that's it for now. This is Walter Bosley at the Walter Bosley Channel.